I'm going to dive into the account creation process and a little bit of a background on what accounts are and how you can use them in the system. So, the first thing we can do is we are just in the accounts menu, so that's going to be under cards and accounts. And then here you're going to be able to see the list of accounts that you have in the system. So these are current accounts that already exist. If you need to edit them, delete them, set them to invalid, or revalidate something that's already invalid, you could simply do so here. We also have last transaction options. You can see the last transactions that were performed for this account. If we click edit, then you will see the details of the current account that you have selected here. And then some of these fields may or may not be editable after you create these options. So if you have any problems with the field that you need to change that you cannot change because this is grayed out, then you may need to consider creating a new account with the correct settings. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and just add a new account to the system. So we're going to hit plus. Now we need to change and set some parameters in the system so that the system understands what we would like our account to be. Before we dive into this, we are going to kind of go over some different options that you can use accounts for. We've touched on this a little bit in our proprietary card file setup. So if you don't know how to set the restrictions for accounts, you may want to see that video. And then here we're going to kind of dive into accounts. What is the point of an account? Why should you use accounts? What is the purpose? So there's a couple different ways that you can track this. So the best way to understand accounts is to consider them as a group. So for example, you have a department in your organization for maintenance, or you have a department for accounting. If you would like those particular people in that department to fuel, and you want to track their fueling separate than everybody else that's fueling on your site, that's where accounts come into play. So if I want to group a certain number of drivers and vehicles in a particular account, then I can by creating the card and putting them in their own account. The number of accounts not limited, so you can pretty much create as many accounts as your fuel site controller can store, as well as cards. So they're basically treated as a card on your fuel site controller. So when we create the account, we need to define, simple parameters here. So you're going to do an account ID number. You're going to do an account name. This account user 1 is a custom field that you can change this label for, and user 2, you can change these labels under organization, user strings, and then account user 1. So if you wanted to track something additional on the account, you could also do that. We did that in the cards menu for cell phone. You could do the same thing here, or you can create your own custom labels for those accounts. Now, under here, you'll want to go ahead and fill out as much information as you can. So, the address, if this particular account is in a certain location, and we are asking for a contact name and a contact email address here for a particular account. So this is going to allow future notifications at an account level. So you'll want to go ahead and fill out this information when creating an account. We also have options for a contact phone number. In order for the contact phone number to be enabled, you do need to accept text messages so that the system can deliver those alert notifications via text message. So you'll want to turn that on, and then you could put in a phone number here as well if you want to use that feature. Down here, you're going to have an FSC account number. So this is going to be a 4-digit number that's sent down to your fuel site controller with your particular cards. So you'll need to have an account number here as well. Now, if you do not see this feature, it could be because your proprietary card file setup is simply not using accounts on your fuel site controller, so this number may not be available and it's not required at that point. The other option here, we have a short name, so this is just an abbreviated name for your account that's being sent down to the controller as well. We do have restrictions on an account. So the restrictions, once again, are going to be certain restrictions based on the restrictions that we have set up under here for quantity restrictions. Also, your defined card record for your proprietary card file. So certain restrictions from here may also appear under the accounts option, and you could restrict them based on account. So for example, I just added daily allocation and monthly allocation. So if you'd like all of these cards in this particular account to have a certain allocation, then we can allocate based on account if you'd like to. So that's going to set a daily limit for fuel, a monthly limit for fuel for this particular account. If you wanted to do certain quantity restrictions or product restrictions based on this account, you can do that as well. If you don't want to use these and you don't need these features, you can simply turn them off in the card file option and they will disappear from this menu. The ultimate goal here is to enable only the thing that you want and turn off the features that you don't use to make your process easier and more streamlined. So once we go through these, we also have some extended prompting. If you want to prompt for a certain account in a different way, you can. And we will just need to save this. When we go to create a card under driver vehicle records, then we are going to have an account drop-down list for all of the accounts that we've created in the system. Each card needs to be linked to an account, and that allows you to track what account fueled and everything on a transaction level. So if you want to know, everybody in the maintenance department, how much did they fuel, then we can simply run a maintenance report and it'll say all these cards are in the maintenance account, so I'm going to generate a report on only this card data. Now, depending on how you set up your system, your fuel site controller may or may not have the account data, whether you decided to go with non-restricted or restricted. So restricted and most restricted are going to share that FSC account, system account number with the fuel site controller, and then each card is going to either need to be in the same account as the driver and the vehicle, or if they're in different accounts, they're going to be restricted, or they will need to be set up as no associated account, and they'll be able to be a global account that can cross fuel. So if you don't understand that, I did explain it in the proprietary card file setup once again, so if you need to use that as a refresher, you can. But just know that accounts are something that each card is going to be in, and you'll want to set up your cards with the particular account data. If you don't simply want to use accounts, you don't have to. So you can just assign every card as a no associated account. So let me just show you what that's going to look like. So under account selection, you can select no associated account, and basically every card that you select with this is not going to be linked to a particular account. And they will not be restricted based on account. So that is one other option. Or you can simply create one account and assign every card to the same account, and that would basically do the same thing. So everybody's going to be in the same thing. They're not really going to be restricted. Now, the trick is if you want to restrict them or if you want to limit who can fuel what, then you'll want to make sure that either if they are trying to be able to fuel between the driver and the vehicle, then either they're in the same account or somebody is a no associated account, which means they're global and then they can fuel any vehicle amongst any account. If you want them to be restricted, then we'll have to set up that restriction, and then we'll also make them in their own correct account, which will stop them from fueling if they're in different accounts. So we'll want to just basically come into the application, create the accounts that you want, make sure that the status is valid if you want them to be valid, and then when you go to create cards, you'll want to associate those cards with the correct account number.